How's everyone doing?
Good.
Yeah, good. Hey, this is going to be interactive, so if you guys have any questions or anything, please stop me and talk about whatever you have questions on. It'll probably help this thing go the 30 to 45 minutes. So first I'll kind of talk about who is this guy in front of you. I'm Don Day, former Director of Strength and Conditioning at Georgia Southern, former Director of Strength and Conditioning at the University of Buffalo. And with that being said, there's a lot of formers, so maybe everything I say you guys don't have to take as gold. Maybe you guys try things better. Maybe I didn't do too good at it. So I'm from Akron, Ohio. Oh, shout out to my wife that brought me up here on her Sunday. She has a lot of work she has to be doing, but she instead decided to bring me to Atlanta. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Brianna. Big shout out, yeah, thank you. So I'm from Akron, Ohio, 330 Lebron James, everyone knows about him. Steph Curry, I guess I'll claim, Halle Berry, all the rest of them. Grew up in Akron, Ohio, played football at the University of Findlay. Then I got my, I started kind of my career at Bowling Green State University as an intern. Then I went from there to the University of Akron. University of Akron, I went to, it's a long list. I'm trying to remember the board at our house. We have like a list of schools we've been at together. So University of Akron, I went to, help me out, Robert Morris. So I went to Robert Morris. Then from Robert Morris, I went to American University. From American University, I went to Western Kentucky University. From Western Kentucky, I went to Buffalo. From Buffalo, I went to Georgia Southern. And we'll find out where I go next, I guess, I suppose. So the biggest thing that I'm going to talk about today is kind of conjugate training, how I kind of do it, which is, I wish I had a whiteboard to write on because I got a lot of weird different.
I can get you a whiteboard.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I'll just talk. Conjugate training, how I use it with baseball, and then kind of who I am as a coach and kind of things that have helped me out in my career, maybe things that you should probably avoid if you don't want a lot of formers, a lot of schools on your list of stuff, right? So 7 schools in almost a decade, going to be 8 coming up soon. Knock on wood. All right, so kind of the first thing I'll kind of preface this with is there always has to be a why behind what you're doing, right? So shout out to all the speakers. You guys have done a great job, but you guys all mentioned this. You don't just kind of do stuff just to do it, right? And I loved what you said. Conjugate can sometimes be a fancy way of saying I'm lazy. I'm not going to program. I'm just going to rotate exercises whenever. I think conjugate training is really awesome, and it gives you a lot of freedom, but you also have to have plan within that freedom, right? It can't just be, I wake up tomorrow, I'm just going to do this because it's conjugate. Or I'm going to switch this bar out because it's conjugate. You won't get really good results from doing that, and your kids will eventually know, I mean, you only have so much equipment, right? So they'll know that you're kind of just BSing your way through it, right? So that's kind of like the big thing with conjugate training. You know, you have to have a why for what you're doing. And something that really helped me out that I heard Louis say is everything has a max. So for me, I use those maxes to either, when I rotate exercises, I use the maxes, I use the mechanical advantages to, in season, to kind of make the lift a little less taxing on the body, but still use the max to get the stimulus out of it. And in the off season, I use that to kind of make the lift a little harder on the body because I'm trying to build that base of absolute strength in the off season, right? So I love that everything has a max. I don't want to take my barbell back squat number and then all of a sudden rotate to a pitch shark, because the maxes won't be the same and you won't get the same stimulus out of the pitch shark that you want, right? If you're using let's just say a 400-pound max on a pitch shark, what are you really gonna get off of that thing, right? So you have to kind of play around with the maxes. You might not have everything recorded. I didn't have everything recorded. I kind of made the maxes up as I saw how they train, right? But I do believe that having a pre-recorded max list is very beneficial for when you rotate exercises. And as I was going through my years of baseball, we started to collect more maxes, so that really helped us out a lot. So going into kind of like the overall layout of how we did things at Georgia Southern with the baseball team, first I got to shout out Coach Rodney Hennon. He had really, really good athletes that he brought to me. So they were really strong, really powerful. A kid this year, Corey Dodell, came in back squatting 605, and by the time I left, he was back squatting maybe 6, I think closer to 650. But Coach Hennon brought me in a freshman that back squat 605. I used to joke with him, Coach, I knew I must have done good last year because he bringing me these stud freshmen for me to play around with. So that was awesome. But, the biggest thing is you have to, at my level with our athletes, they're good athletes, right? And like you said, Coach, I'm not the baseball coach. I'm not the volleyball coach. I'm none of that stuff. I am the strength coach, right? So I don't really sit there and try to get too into the weeds how a lot of strength coaches do at the college level. Like, we're not doing tricep press with a basketball or like stupid stuff like that, right? It's up to the basketball coach to teach them how to play basketball, the baseball coach to teach them how to play baseball. I'm here to improve their, not just their weights, not just their lifts, right? Improve their, kind of build that clay to give to the coach, right? Build that general base of work capacity, build the absolute strength, power development, all those good things that when I give them back to the coach in season, now we can see how the coach does, right? Hopefully you have good coaches, or else, it doesn't really matter what you do with them, right? Ultimately in college athletics. But so kind of how we go, let me talk about how we lay out our day. So how we kind of train how we did train at Georgia Southern is I was a conjugate tier system guy that also used a little bit of high-low sequencing that I got from obviously Charlie Francis, right? So I'll try to talk this out as slow as possible. All right, so I used a little bit of Cal Dietz layout in how I did my workout, all right? So big Cal Dietz guy. So we train max effort 3 times a week, all right? Well, I like to call max effort, which is to me above 80% and above. That's just kind of what my max effort was. So let's just go over how the day is laid out. So let's just say Monday, and then I'll go into the overall layout and all that kind of stuff. So for me, we're doing my tiers are max effort, dynamic effort, rep effort, right? And how I end up doing it, and why I do max effort first, is because when we go into dynamic effort, I like to have a little bit of post-activation potentiation from our max effort, right? So my max effort on, Monday might be a bench, and then we'll go into a dynamic effort, depending on what the tier looks like. It could be a deadlift, and then, that's like what you're thinking about your true dynamic effort. It's that other side of the power development equation. If power is force times velocity, my max effort is my force. My dynamic effort is more my velocity. So that's when we get kind of into our higher sets, low reps, right? So we might be doing 14 sets of 3, 14 sets of 2. With upper body, I always do 3 reps. I just find the first rep is terrible. I don't have really that much science behind that. I just always have found the first rep is a throwaway. With lower body, I always do doubles because I find the opposite to be true. The third rep is the throwaway, and the first 2 are your good ones. Really, that second rep is your best one. So dynamic effort, we're doing, 14 sets of 2, and we're waving off, and I'll talk about that later. Then we go into our rep effort. My rep effort in college athletics is just accessories. I call it rep effort because that's probably where we're going to get the most reps out of, right? And I keep my accessories similar when I kind of wave and when I kind of periodize. Sorry, the acronym's coming out of me now. When I do out my plan, all right? I keep my rep effort closer to how I'm doing my max effort. So that kind of describes a general day. All right, now we'll back up and we'll talk about the week as far as lifting. So this is where the Cal Dietz comes into place, all right? So Cal Dietz is moderate, heavy, and then light periodization, right? So Monday is a moderate day, Wednesday is a heavy day, and then Friday is the light day as far as, and I look at this based off my max effort, because that's probably the biggest strain I'm going to have throughout my week, right? My max efforts. So when we talk about that, I go off of kind of tonnage, right? So my Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are all going to be, my max effort's all going to be the same percentage, right? So I might go 80% on, I'm just throwing out random numbers. Monday, 80% on bench. Wednesday, 80% on squat. Friday, 80% on deadlift, whatever it might be, it's going to be the same percentage every single day. Those lifts won't be the things that I do because I'll go into it later. But what I can look at is the tonnage lifted to give me my moderate, my heavy, and my light as far as my intensities. So with baseball, right? My moderate has always ended up being deadlift. So it's the second heaviest lift they have, deadlift. And we do sumo deadlift. I like sumo deadlift for the hips, the groin, the glutes, the hamstrings, all of that kind of stuff. The low back, which every college athlete has low backs, except for the ones you guys train. I appreciate that. So then no one really works the low back anymore. I don't know why. But that is a big thing we find. Everyone works the anterior, never the posterior, whatever. And I think the low back is the start of the posterior chain, the way I look at it. So, again, Monday, that's our, oh boy, I'm messing this all up. So Monday is our moderate day for baseball. That is always our sumo deadlift. Wednesday will be our heavy day as far as our max effort, and that's always squat. And we box squat. I don't free squat. I don't test a free squat. I'm not training power lifters, so there's no reason to test a free squat. We'll test box squat on the days we really test, but we don't traditionally test. I don't traditionally test with most sports. Baseball I do because, baseball players, they all kind of douchebags sometimes. They love test days, so I bring in a DJ, I buy into it, and I turn into a huge douchebag. I have a DJ, all that kind of stuff, but whatever. So baseball will test. But anyway, so Wednesday will be our heavy day, heavy intensity, and then our light intensity day is our Fridays is our bench press for baseball team. All right, and some things with bench press in baseball is we don't traditional bench. So the fielders, the catchers, the hitters, whatever you want to call them, they use kind of like the quarterback, the neutral grip bar, and sometimes we'll go off a board, sometimes I'll talk about that later. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Let me just explain the layout first. And then our pitchers will use the shoulder saver pad when they bench press. So now that I kind of got the layout of the lifts, so we go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? Those in-between days are my low days if we're going off a high-low, right? So you look at, this is where the Charlie Francis comes in. So my high-intensive days are my Monday, my Wednesday, and my Friday. My low-intensive days are my Tuesday and my Thursdays, in a perfect world, are my Tuesdays and Thursdays. What I do on those days is my agility or my speed work, or sometimes, very rarely, tempo. I don't really ever condition baseball. I did coming off the coronavirus because I didn't really know like what kind of shape they would be in, and then after a week or two I was like, all right, well, they're good to play baseball. I mean, you can drink a beer and go play baseball, so they were good after a week or two of general GPP, and it was literally straight up like 70% tempo runs that we did to get there. But anyway, so you look at your Tuesday and Thursday. I say agility, people think, well, agility, that's high intensity. Not really, because what is happening when you're doing agility, we'll just say agility drills. You are starting and then immediately decelerating. You're not reaching maximal speed if you put it to a GPS unit or anything. So it's a low, it's a high effort, but it's low intensive, right? So you can do agility on those low days. My speed work for baseball, I just do accelerations. I don't really do very long speed stuff. I really don't mess with it. We do more plyometrics, but our plyometrics are more extensive and not intensive on those days. So I can put them on those Tuesdays and Thursdays. And, again, with baseball, they're not track athletes, they're not wide receivers. Even my outfield guys, I mean, it's really not that intensive all the time. Maybe once in a while, right? But not all the time. All right, so we talked about how the week is laid out, all right? We talked about now let's talk about the rotation of exercises as far as the tiers go, right? So I tier everything. My blocks are max effort, dynamic effort, rep effort, right? So then based off of those moderate, heavy, light, right, is kind of how I tier. Now I write it out, so on Monday, if my moderate day, I'm going to deadlift, then I'm going to bench for my dynamic effort. My max effort will be deadlift, my dynamic effort will be bench, and my rep effort will be accessories for the squat. because when I rotate my exercise on Wednesday, now my squat is the first thing on the max effort. My deadlift is will be some variation of deadlift for my dynamic effort, usually some kind of lower body dynamic effort. And then my bench will be my rep effort. And then on Friday when I rotate again, now my max effort is going to be bench, dynamic effort will be some form of squat, and my rep effort will be some accessories that complement the deadlift. Yeah, deadlift. So that's kind of how I rotate those things. And again, when I talk about my rep effort is literally accessories that complement those, whatever fits in that tier, right? So usually it's upper body accessories. With baseball, it's a lot of pulls. It's a lot of maybe once in a while some dumbbell offset press. That's the only other press we do just to get their strength of their scap through a full range of motion. I think mobility is strength through a full range of motion. Like you said, I don't waste a lot of time doing ankle mob or any of that kind of stuff. I think that's just, for strength coaches that they put a lot of fluff in because they can't fill it with anything of sustenance, right? So I don't waste time with that. Maybe if coach wants to give me 6 days a week, okay, well, one of those days we'll do stretches because if anyone's ever worked with pitchers, they're all weird and they like to stretch, so we'll do stretches one day with the pitchers, I guess. So my rep effort, again, is accessories that complement whatever that movement in that tier is, right? So it's usually lower body posterior. Lower body is always posterior work. Maybe some single leg stuff, once in a while, stuff like that. And then on my days where bench is the rep effort, it's always some kind of back, some kind of lat back, eccentric lat, all that kind of stuff, because the lats decelerate the shoulder. So I do a lot of eccentric lats so they can learn to absorb force. Then on my dynamic effort days, it's going to be some kind of, I cheaply coin it, power movement, some kind of velocity movement, right? And I don't always use tendo units. I have tendo units. I use tendo units to kind of auto-regulate in season, and I don't like to get too cute with tendo units and what I do in season. I just kind of use it as, hey, like, you know what? We've built this base of absolute monster strength in the off season. Now it's in season, and I still want you guys to get after it, but baseball players can kind of be sensitive, right? So hey, let's get the most out of this when it comes to the velocity part of the equation in power output, right? So that's when I'll say, hey, I don't really care about the weight. I care about how fast you move that weight. And if you are moving in a certain range, let's add weight. All right. And then real quick, my spiel on Olympic lifts. I don't really think they're much necessary or anything. I have baseball players that freshman day one, we're doing 275 to 305 on trap bar jumps between 1.0 and 1.3 meters per second, which is extremely fast. To teach freshmen to power clean 275 to 305 would have taken me forever, or might not have happened, and I don't really think it's that very much important, right? Anyway, we talk about triple extension with Olympic lifts. Well, you get more triple extension with a trap bar jump because you are jumping off the ground, right? So anyway, that's my spiel on Olympic lifts. So anyway, that's, dynamic effort. Again, it is just kind of working the velocity side of that equation. So I can get cute with it. I can rotate whatever I want to do with the exercises. It might be a trap bar shrug. It might be a rack pull. It might be a speed bench press. Whatever it might be, depending on where we're at in the off season or in the end season, right? And then with my max effort, I don't like to vary what we're doing with max effort too much. All right. The only things I will vary, I might vary the lift depending on where we're at. I don't do conjugate. I don't change things up just to change things up. If we're having very good success on a certain rotation of exercises, then that's where we'll stay. So if we're doing, for example, baseball, again, very creatures of habit. When we beat Georgia, we were doing split stance pin squats with chains. That was kind of where the rotation was going. And we beat Georgia, so then guess what we did for the next 3 weeks? Split stance pin squats with chains, because once you do one thing, they always want to do that thing over and over and over again. And depending also on the, with the pitchers, I like to talk to the pitchers, especially in season, hey, maybe it's been a few weeks and we've been doing maybe we've rotated 3 sets of different exercises, right? Because I go on 3-week waves. So maybe we've gone through wave 1, wave 2, wave 3. And now we're about to go into, wave 4, whatever, the 4th set of waves. Hey guys, what did you like during those first 9 weeks? What really helped you guys? What felt good? What didn't feel good? And when it comes to the individualization, that's where I do some individualization. So, my Friday pitcher, he was a JUCO guy. He didn't coach, whatever you want. I don't care. Okay, perfect. That's the easiest guy to work with, right? My Saturday guy was a little bit more, perceptive about his body is the way I'll go with it, right? So coach, I like to do this. I like to do this before the game. I feel good doing this. All right, buddy. All right, I might do one of those things. And then my Sunday guy, he was a guy that if I let him, he would max out every single day, probably before the game. So with him, it was just trying to get him to understand, like, hey, listen, it's max effort, right? I get it's max effort. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but that doesn't mean we need to max out every single day. Kind of just stay on your card, bud. Like, just stay on this percentage and we'll be all right. But he didn't really care that much either. So with the big thing with I find, like, outside of the program, now that we've gone over the program, we'll kind of go more on the general side of training baseball, right? So the big thing with baseball players that I've found is they are very sensitive about their bodies, right? Football guys, you can give them a rock and tell them to slam it against their head, and I'll say, hey, that'll make you better. They'll do it. Baseball guys will be like, well, what's the rock made out of? How's that going to affect whatever it might be, right? So baseball guys, the biggest thing at the beginning is the buy-in and talking to them and giving them autonomy, and that's something that coming off of football, going into baseball, I did struggle a little bit at first. I was like, well, because I fucking said to. That's why I want you to do it this way. Mixed results, right? So I think where I grew over the course of time is learning, hey, this is the culture of baseball. This is the culture of the team. It's not saying it's a soft culture because we were extremely strong. Pound for pound, the strongest team on campus. In absolute strength, I'd probably say that overall, by the time I left, we might have been absolutely the strongest team on campus. But it was just talking to them and learning to give autonomy to help them and not being such a blockhead and such a meathead, like, there's only one way. And that's where Conjugate, helps out of, when I'm doing my programming and all that kind of stuff. Well, I'm going to rotate exercises here in another week anyway, so why not talk to them about what helps out the most, right? Because there's really no, I'm not married to, I was doing 8s with my cleans, and now I'm doing 6s with my cleans, and now I'm doing 4s, and now I was going to move to 3s, and I have to stay on this Olympic lift block. You wouldn't do 8s with cleans, obviously, but you know what I'm saying. So I really enjoy the freedom that Conjugate gives you, and it really mirrors well with baseball, because what is baseball? It's a power sport. What is power? Force times velocity. So the things we work with Conjugate is developing a great absolute base, and then velocity. I'd say the GPP is important when it comes to the lifting aspect. Carry over to the sport of baseball, there's not too much that you need for, if you can, maybe run a base or two, you'll be fine for a game. But, when it comes to the general, the GPP work, the way I get my GPP for baseball is anaerobic endurance, right? So what I mean by that is we do train extremely tough, and we train extremely hard, and we train extremely, extremely fast. So if you didn't know, you might think you were walking into a CrossFit gym by like the speed that we go in. So we'll do, perfect example, we'll do a warm-up let's just say Monday, we got max effort, right? We'll do 5-3-1 for our warm-up. Then we'll go into 3 sets of whatever our working sets are all the same percentage. So we might be going 3 sets at, let's say, 85, 90%. Then we'll go into 14 sets of whatever the dynamic effort is. And I usually pair that with another exercise for, some kind of, get a little bit more posterior, and usually it's a row, just because for baseball, usually a single arm row. And then we'll go into 3 different exercises at the end for our rep effort, right? And it'll be 3 or 4 exercises for about 3 or 4 sets. All that stuff if we really wanted to, could get done in 25 to 30 minutes. Usually it's 30 to 35 minutes. If we get into the 50-minute mark, my athletes are like staring at me like, Coach, why are we going so slow? So that's how I build up my work capacity for baseball. That's why last year I never conditioned them. The year before didn't condition them. This year conditioned them for a week or 2. So that's kind of like the overarching weight room stuff. Now, talking about the stuff we do on the field with baseball, how it kind of mirrors on those low days, right? When I'm thinking about training baseball, it's all short bursts. It's a lot of short bursts. Sometimes, even if you hit a home run, usually the guy is walking around the bases. So when it comes to that, and there's agility component to it, right? But it's not too, it's different than football. It's a lot different than football, obviously, because everyone knows game of baseball, game of football. So when we talk about training baseball, field work, and all that kind of stuff, I'm really just working acceleration. And I think the acceleration kind of plays into the max velocity. I know that doing dynamic effort work in the weight room might not be the exact same as running, right? I know it's not the same as running because you have a barbell on your back and you're running in free area, right? You're sprinting with your body. But I do believe it is teaching the CNS to fire at a high rate, right? And that's why I love my dynamic work, and that's where I see a lot of carryover from my dynamic effort work. I think that the plyometrics, again, finding things that teach the body to fire at a high rate, the SAID principle, specific adaptations to impose demands, right? So when I teach the body to fire at a high rate, when I teach the body to be explosive when I jump, when I teach the body to be explosive when we're doing dynamic effort work, when I'm doing dynamic effort work from different joint angles that are specific to runs, right? I see that carryover. All right, so for example, I had we did 60s this year. We test 60s every year. So coach wanted to test the 60s because, he wanted to test the 60s, baseball thing. They like 60-yard dashes. And I had 2 people that stayed the same. One guy had a hamstring injury. One guy hadn't lifted because he had like an elbow thing going on from the previous JUCO he was at. Those were the only 2 guys that did not see improvement in their 60-yard dash. I don't run 60s. I don't waste time running 60s. I do acceleration work. I do change of direction. And we do tons of plyometrics. Single leg plyometrics, single leg eccentrics, single leg, in the weight room, do single leg eccentrics, all those kind of stuff. We'll do hand assisted single leg split squats. We'll do a lot of single leg work eccentrically. So again, I didn't test any 60s. We didn't run any 60s. We probably didn't run over maybe 25 yards total. Everyone on the team, a team of 50-something that tested, except for 2 people, had drastic improvements in their 60-yard dash. All right? I had how old is Matt? I think he's 24, 25 with this COVID thing. They all got another year. So and he had broken his back from a long time ago. So he had like 2 extra years, 3. I don't even know how old Matt is. Matt and me could have been in college. I know that together. But anyway, Matt dropped his time by 0.4 seconds in his 40-yard dash, being a 7th-year senior. I had a lot of seniors. I'd say the average was 0.3 to 0.2 seconds off in their 60-yard dash when we tested. And I attribute that to a lot of specific training to kind of the things that I wanted to see carry over, right? If I want you to be fast, you got to train fast, right? Training slow is not going to make you fast. If I want you to be powerful off of one leg driving, well, we should probably work on we should probably do single leg stuff, right? I'm not saying you gotta do it to be cute in the weight room, to be one of those, as Buddy Morris would say, personal terrorists. I'm saying you have to do it because it makes sense, right? When you run, you are running off of one leg at a time, right? So it's probably important to train one leg at a time. When you move, it's unilateral because one leg's up, one leg's down. You have to do unilateral work. You have to do plyometrics. You have to do different types of plyometrics. And I think you will see an adaptation to everywhere. This last year, we were a really good baseball team. Part of that is definitely recruiting. I definitely think that part of it is also really, really good intensive training. All right, this year we're coming into the season ranked number 29, and I tell you, this team is probably there's no limit to where they're going to go. Again, part of that's recruiting, part of that is very intensive training. So the biggest thing you can take from me, and the thing I really like about Conjugate, isn't just the fact that, it's the rotation of exercises. It's the freedom you get. It's the way that, if you set it up the right way, you can do Conjugate and you can do really good speed work and you can do all this other stuff. It's not, hey, Coach Day is up here talking about Charlie Francis and Cal Dietz and he's really smart, because I promise you, I'm not that smart, all right? I just tested a lot of things and now I know what not to do, all right? The thing that you can take from Conjugate is the intensity at which you train. Right? When you put chains on anything, the kids go even harder, right? Especially the meat-headed ones. We don't do a lot of band work because, I just don't think, probably this season I would have because they were there, but at the beginning, they could have handled that overspeed eccentric on the way down. So I don't ever use bands, I just use chains. But the intensity, the intent is the biggest thing that I've learned with Conjugate training. And the even bigger thing that has really made a difference is not just coaching. Obviously, you always coach technique. You always, want to have a plan for what you're doing. But a little secret that most people don't coach, a little cue that most people don't coach, is intent. You have to have intent on everything you do. Whether it's heavy, move it as fast as possible. Whether it's light, move it as fast as possible. Whether it's an intermediate weight, move that thing as fast as possible. Always have intent on everything you do. And I think if there was any secret sauce to the program or any secret sauce to what I do, it's I coach the hell out of intent, no matter what we're doing. Hey, if you're doing dumbbell rows, we're going to row. We're going to row. If you're doing pull-ups, unless we're, even on the eccentric pull-ups, hey, control the part down, but let's have intent on the way back up. You need to give yourself a little kick on the way back up. Always have intent on everything. When you're doing your agilities, when you're doing your accelerations, you'll see that carry over, right? You'll see that intent and that hard, I'm going to go 100% on everything I have. It's always going to be a maximal effort on everything that I do. And I talk about, bridging the gap to the baseball field. Guys, you have to have intent on everything you do. Pitchers, I understand, you're going to have your weird, pitchers are aliens, so I let them do their own thing. But you have to have intent on your swings. You have to have intent on how you throw, where you're putting the ball at, right? You have to have intent when you run to get that fly ball, when you try to field that ground ball. Have to have intent on everything you do. It's a mindset that starts with the weight room and bleeds over into everything. I tell them, hey, have intent on your homework, have intent on your dating life, have intent on all those stuff. Like, we have to get after everything that you do, and I believe Conjugate, more so than any other style of lifting, is a great style to breed those monsters, those beasts, that ferociousness. God dog it, my Akron education boy. Ferociousness in what you do. To coach what you were saying, kind of how I'll end this thing is, you also have to really know your kids. Know and love your kids. I tell my guys all the time I love them. Well, I don't have them anymore, but I did, right? I tell all my athletes I love them. All my athletes, reached out to me at all times of the day. I cut them off at a certain point at night because my wife will yell at me. But she knows, I think at Georgia Southern, my unsaid role was a school counselor, right? So for coaches, surprisingly, just as much as the athletes. So I think what really, and again, that's my intent of being a good coach, right? So I can't just say, hey, we're going to be really good in the weight room, we'll be good on the field, we'll get wins, it's all about winning, and then I'll forget about you. No, like, you got to have intent on being, if you want to be the best strength coach you can be, or the best strength coach in the world. I think the difference is actually caring about your athletes. You know what I mean? My job is never predicated on wins and losses. My job is never predicated on how much they lifted. My job was predicated on, am I a good coach? And to me, a good coach is someone that cares about their athletes, that really delves into their athletes, and caring about your athletes, being a servant leader, to me, is putting everyone else in front of yourself, right? So, like, with my athletes, it could be something as simple as a bipolar athlete needing help scheduling their medication, and me saying, all right, well, I'll show you how to use a Google Calendar. It's not my job description, but that's stuff I did. It might be something as simple as, an athlete getting out of study hall and not wanting to walk 2 miles home in the dead of night. So, hey, yeah, I'll pick you up. I'll take you back to your place because it's probably not safe for you to walk all the way at home late at night by yourself, right? Those kind of things, those extracurricular things that you do with your athletes are things that they're going to remember. They're not going to, they enjoy the max outs. They enjoy lifting the heavy weight. They enjoy those kinds of things. But what will help make a difference in their lives are, hey, you know what? Coach Day stopped by and he picked me up when I didn't have a ride and I needed help to get to the next place. And that really meant a lot to me. Or, Coach Day helped me out take care of some personal issues. Or, what Coach Day always said, he loved me. Coach Day always showed that he cared, that he actually gave a damn versus, Coach only congratulated me after wins. Coach was only there when the lights were on. That's the differences between a okay strength coach and a real coach. So that's what I really want to leave you guys with, and make sure that you keep loving your athletes.
Coach, would you mind me taking